They say an Omega knows the moment his alphas stop loving him. Not from a fight, not from a cold shoulder, from the silence, the specific surgical kind that fills a house and teaches you how to disappear inside your own marriage. I knew 3 years ago. I just kept cooking breakfast anyway. The divorce papers are sitting on the kitchen counter between a half-empty coffee mug and a vase of dying tulips nobody bought me. I bought them myself. 3 weeks ago. Because I thought color might make this house feel less like a waiting room. My name is Eli Calloway. I am 26 years old. I am an Omega. I am married to 3 of the most powerful alpha kings in all of Colorado, Calder, Reed, and Sawyer Voss, and I have not had a real conversation with any of them in 412 days. Yes, I counted. I am also, apparently, slightly unhinged. But in my defense, counting days is the only hobby available when your husbands forget you exist. I set my mug down and stare at the papers. The lawyer's letterhead is crisp and official. My signature is already on page 4, small and neat, like everything else about me that nobody noticed. All I need is one of them to sign. Just one. The house is enormous. A modern architectural thing sitting at the edge of Boulder, Colorado, all glass walls and exposed wood beams and a view of the Flatirons that would make anyone cry. I cried once, watching the mountains at sunrise, wrapped in a blanket, alone, waiting for one of them to come home. That was year 2. By year 4, I stopped watching sunrises. I started reading case law instead. See, that is the thing about being ignored. You either shrink or you sharpen. I chose sharp. I pull the papers closer and smooth the corner that bent when Reed's briefcase knocked into the counter this morning. He walked right past me without blinking. His scent hit me anyway. Cedar and cold air and something underneath that my biology still responds to like a traitor. And I stood very still until he was gone and the kitchen smelled like just coffee again. My power stirred, the way it always does when my emotions spike. Psychometry. The ability to read the history of any object I touch. I have had it since I was 17. One brush of my fingertips against anything. A chair, a door handle, a wedding ring. And I see it. Every hand that held it. Every emotion soaked into the material. The joy, the indifference, the grief. It is a spectacular gift for someone who married 3 men and spent 5 years wondering what they actually felt. It is also why I stopped touching things in this house a long time ago. I already know what the walls would tell me. I do not need confirmation. I slide my thumb along the edge of the divorce papers. Just paper, no emotional history yet, clean and waiting. And I feel nothing but my own resolve, which honestly feels like the healthiest thing I've touched in months. The front door opens at 7:52 a.m. Sawyer first, then the sound of Reed's phone call echoing through the entryway, then Calder's footsteps. Heavier, slower, the deliberate walk of a man who owns every room he enters. I do not move. They pass through the kitchen like I am furniture. Sawyer grabs his keys from the hook. Reed ends his call and immediately starts another. Calder opens the refrigerator, closes it, pours water, and turns to leave. He stops. For one single second, Calder Voss looks at the papers on the counter. His jaw tightens. Something moves behind his eyes. I catch it the way you catch a light flickering before it goes out. Then he looks at me. Actually looks at me, like he just now remembered I have a face. Eli. His voice is low, careful. Calder. Mine is pleasant, bright even. I have been practicing pleasant for 5 years. He glances at the papers again. What is that? Paperwork. I smile. The kind where you sign at the bottom. The kitchen goes very quiet. Reed lowers his phone. Sawyer turns around from the door, keys still in his hand. Deck and all 3 of them are suddenly looking at me with an attention they have not given me since the day we were bonded. Funny how that works. Eli, Reed starts, that deep, controlled voice he uses in boardrooms. This is not the time. It really is, though. I pick up my mug, take a sip. The coffee is perfect. I make perfect coffee because I had nothing else to perfect. I have been patient. I gave you 5 years and 412 days of waiting in this beautiful house that feels like a very expensive hotel I never checked out of. And now my first love just texted me for the first time in 6 years, and I thought, you know what, Eli? Maybe it is time. The silence that follows is the loudest thing I've ever heard. Sawyer's keys hit the counter, and I take another sip of my coffee. And I want to be clear. I am not doing this for drama. I am not the type to flip tables or throw rings into fountains. I am the type who quietly files paperwork, highlights the relevant clauses in yellow, and presents it on a Tuesday morning between a coffee mug and dying tulips that nobody bought him. I am calm. I am composed. I am also aware that all 3 of my husbands are currently staring at me like I just announced I could fly. Which, for the record, I cannot. I just read objects with my hands. Completely different. Your first love, Calder repeats, slowly, like the words taste strange in his mouth. I set my mug down. Marcus Webb. We were together from 17 to 20. He moved to Portland for graduate school, and we ended things because long distance felt impossible back then. I pause. He texted last night. Odds he is back in Boulder. Reed's second phone call dies mid-ring. He does not even look at the screen. That is how I know the temperature in the room just changed. Sawyer is the first one to actually move. He steps closer, not aggressive, just present, in the way he rarely is anymore. He is the youngest of the 3, blonde and broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of a winter sky that I used to think were beautiful before I learned they could look straight through me. You are not serious, he says. Page 4, I tell him pleasantly. My signature is already there. I left space for yours. His mouth opens, closes. I reach for a dish towel and start wiping down the counter because the coffee splashed a little when Reed's elbow knocked the mug earlier, and honestly, someone in this house needs to clean things up. Mo Eli. Reed's voice has shifted. The boardroom tone is gone, replaced by something lower, something I have not heard in a long time. My traitorous nervous system notices immediately. I ignore it with the focused discipline of a man who has had years of practice. Put the towel down and look at me. I fold the towel neatly over the faucet handle and look at him. Reed Voss is unfairly structured. That has always been the problem. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of face that looks best when it is serious, which is always. He's looking at me right now with an expression I cannot quite name, and some old, embarrassing part of me wants to press my palm to his cheek just to feel what that expression actually means. I do not. I learned early that reading my husband's would only tell me things I was not ready to survive. Hadi, those papers are not getting signed, Reed says. That is your choice, I say agreeably. Though I should mention that Colorado has a no-fault divorce statute, and after 5 years of legal marriage with documented emotional abandonment, a judge will sign them just fine with or without your cooperation. Calder makes a sound. Not a word exactly. More like the sound a very large, very controlled man makes when the ground shifts under him and he refuses to let his face admit it. Calder is the oldest. The one who first approached me at a university event in Denver 6 years ago, when I was 20 and sharp-tongued and had no idea what triplet alpha kings even wanted with an omega who could read the emotional history of their furniture. He had stood across the room and watched me for 40 minutes before walking over. And the first thing he said was not a compliment or a territorial claim. He said, "You have been holding that wine glass for an hour without drinking it. What are you reading off it?" He was the only person who had ever noticed. I made the catastrophic mistake of falling in love with him immediately. With all 3 of them, eventually. Sequentially and then simultaneously, the way disaster tends to happen. Emotional abandonment, Calder says now, quiet and controlled. That is what you are calling it. That is what the filing calls it, I correct. I would have called it something saltier, but lawyers prefer clinical language. Sawyer exhales through his nose. It might be a laugh. I refuse to let that soften me. "Where is your phone?" Reed asks. I blink. "Excuse me?" Marcus Webb's text. I want to see it. The audacity is so enormous I actually feel my psychometry spark. a warm electric pulse moving from my sternum to my fingertips, the way it does when my emotions override my control. The overhead light flickers. Just once. Just slightly. Sawyer glances up at the ceiling. Reed's eyes drop to my hands. He knows. All three of them know about my ability. They bonded with me knowing. They just never asked about it after the first year. "You want to see my private messages?" I say, very gently, after 412 days of not asking how I was doing. Calder steps forward. He stops close enough that his scent reaches me, cedar and something darker, pine and winter stone. And my biology does that awful, humiliating thing where it leans toward him on a cellular level even while my brain is composing legal arguments. "Eli," he says, and his voice is so low it feels like it comes from somewhere inside the house rather than from his mouth. "We need to talk." I look up at him, directly. Something I have been avoiding for longer than I want to admit. "You had 5 years to say that," I tell him softly. "Marcus called in 5 minutes." The light flickers again. I should probably get that checked. The electrician, I mean, not my emotions. My emotions are functioning perfectly, sharp, organized, and pointed in exactly the right direction. Calder is still standing close enough that I can count the faint tension lines around his eyes. He has new ones. "Aunt, I noticed that the way you notice things about people you memorized before you decided to stop looking." 5 minutes, he repeats. He sent 3 texts, actually. The first one said, "Hey." The second one said, "I heard you are still in Boulder." The third one said, "I would love to catch up if you are open to it." I pause. I counted those as 5 minutes of more effort than I've received in this house since December of last year. Sawyer makes a sound behind me that is almost certainly him trying not to say something he will regret. Good. He should try that more often. Reed has not moved from his spot near the counter. He is doing that thing where he goes very still and very internal, processing everything behind those dark eyes like a server running calculations nobody else can see. I know that look. I used to find it fascinating. I used to think it meant he was taking me seriously. Now I mostly find it exhausting. "Sit down," Reed says finally. I raise one eyebrow. "Please," he adds, like the word costs him something significant. Honestly, from Reed Voss, it probably does. I pull out a bar stool and sit down at the kitchen island, because I am a reasonable person, and also because my legs are doing that faint tremble thing they do when my power is running hot under my skin, and I would prefer not to give any of them the satisfaction of watching me shake. Calder sits across from me. Sawyer leans against the counter to my left with his arms folded, jaw tight, looking like a man who is one sentence away from saying something either very honest or very stupid. 50-50 odds with Sawyer? Reed remains standing. Of course he does. "Talk," I say helpfully. You called the meeting." Calder's hands settle flat on the island's surface. Large hands. I have an extremely inconvenient memory of those hands, warm and careful, tucking a blanket around my shoulders during a storm in our second month together when the power went out and he sat with me on the floor until I stopped flinching at the thunder. I filed that memory under Do Not Touch, along with everything else that used to make me certain I had made the right choice. "We know we have not been present," Calder starts. "Present," I echo. Interesting word. "Eli." "No, genuinely. Present. Like you were here but just slightly transparent. Ghost husbands. Very modern." Sawyer actually coughs. It is definitely a suppressed laugh. Reed shoots him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "May, there were things happening with the pack," Calder continues. "Business complications, territory disputes in the northern sector that required all 3 of us focused and..." "Calder." My voice comes out gentle, not soft. There is a difference. Soft is what I was in year 1. Gentle is what I became after I realized that falling apart quietly was still falling apart. I am going to stop you there because I have heard that sentence or a version of it for 5 years, and I believed it for 4 of them. The kitchen is very quiet. "What changed in year 5? Sawyer asks. His voice is different now. The defensive edge is gone. He sounds almost careful. I look at him. Sawyer has always been the most emotionally readable of the three, which means he is either the most honest or the best at performing honesty. I've never fully decided which. I stopped making excuses on your behalf, I tell him. That is all. I was very good at it. Oh, they are busy. Oh, the pack needs them. Oh, this is just how Alpha Kings operate, Eli. You knew what you were signing up for. I fold my hands on the counter. Turns out I was doing more emotional labor defending you to myself than you were doing actually being my husband's. Nobody speaks. My power hums steadily beneath my skin, warm and present, the way it gets when a moment is saturated with feeling. I am not touching anything right now except my own interlaced fingers, and even that feels like holding something fragile. The divorce papers are not a threat, I say. I want to be clear about that. I am not waving them around to get your attention, even though I glance around the kitchen, and at 3 pairs of eyes locked on me with more focus than I've seen in years. It is genuinely impressive how quickly that worked. Sawyer's mouth twitches. They are a decision, I continue. One I made slowly and carefully over a long time. And Marcus reaching out just reminded me that I used to be someone people chose deliberately. Someone worth the effort of 3 whole texts. Calder's jaw shifts. Something moves through his scent, a change so subtle most people would miss it. I do not miss it. Pine and cedar, and underneath it, something raw, something that smells almost like panic dressed up as control. My stomach does one small, treacherous flip. I press my thumbnail into my palm and ignore it. What do you want? Reed asks. Quiet, stripped of the boardroom voice entirely. Just the question, plain and direct. And somehow that is more disarming than anything else he could have said. I look at him for a long moment. I wanted you, I say simply. Present tense became past tense somewhere around year 3. That is the whole story. Reed's expression does something complicated and fast that I almost miss. Almost. But I have spent 5 years studying the negative space around these 3 men. The pauses between words. The things their shoulders do when they are feeling something they have decided not to say. I became an expert not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way to feel close to them without actually being close to them. Pathetic in retrospect. Impressive in execution. Reed opens his mouth, and then every light in the house goes out. Not a flicker this time. A full, complete, unsudden darkness that swallows the kitchen whole. The hum of the refrigerator dies. The subtle white noise of the ventilation system stops. Outside, through the glass walls, I can see the neighboring houses have lost power too. The flatirons sit gray and patient in the distance under a sky that has turned the specific color of a storm that means business. Perfect, I say to nobody in particular. Very cinematic. It is the storm system that was forecasted for this morning, Sawyer says somewhere to my left. I hear him moving, opening a drawer, the familiar rattle of the flashlight we keep near the stove. He knows exactly where it is because I put it there and told all 3 of them where it was approximately 9 months ago. He actually remembered. I file that away against my will. The flashlight clicks on and a warm beam cuts across the kitchen. Sawyer sweeps it toward the window. Outside, the first heavy drops of rain begin hitting the glass, slow at first and then all at once, the way Colorado storms always arrive. Dramatic. Committed. No easing into it. I respect that about Colorado storms. No hedging. The backup generator should kick in within 5 minutes, Calder says. He has his phone out, screen casting pale light across his face, and he is already typing something. Pack business, probably. It is always pack business. Except he stops typing. He puts the phone face down on the counter. I stare at it for a moment because that has not happened in approximately forever. The roads are going to be bad, Reed says, moving to the window. His outline is dark against the gray light coming through the glass. Your broad shoulders, that particular stillness he carries everywhere. The northern pass was already showing ice warnings this morning. Then you should leave now before it gets worse, I say helpfully. Or, Sawyer says, and I can hear the careful deliberateness in his voice. We stay. I turn to look at him. The flashlight is sitting upright on the counter now, pointing at the ceiling, throwing soft, diffused light across all of us. Sawyer is watching me with that winter sky gaze, serious in a way he usually reserves for pack meetings and things he cannot charm his way through. You want to stay? I repeat. We live here, Eli? Technically, yes, though the guest rooms might argue that point. Calder makes a low sound. Not quite a warning, not quite an admission. Something in between that my biology translates without my permission and sends a small, warm pulse across the back of my neck where the bond mark sits. I reach up and touch it before I can stop myself. It is an old reflex, one I thought I had unlearned. All three of them see me do it. The air in the kitchen changes the way air changes before a static shock, that charged, breathless quality that makes the small hairs on your arms stand up. I lower my hand deliberately and fold it back into my lap. The generator is not coming on, I say, because someone needs to be practical and it has always been me. Which means the heat is off. The temperature is going to drop and this house is 80% glass, so. Guest rooms have the best blanket storage, Sawyer offers. The main living room fireplace is wood burning, Calder says at the same time. I look between them. Then at Reed, who is still by the window and has turned slightly from the glass to watch me with that careful, stripped-down expression he has been wearing since I said past tense. Fine, I say, living room, but I want it stated clearly for the record that this is a weather event and not a reconciliation. The papers are still on the counter. Noted, Calder says. I slide off the bar stool and pick up my coffee mug out of pure habit before remembering the power is out and the mug is cold, and I carry it anyway because putting it down now would feel like losing something. The living room is just off the kitchen, separated by 3 wide steps and an open archway. The fireplace is floor-to-ceiling stone, original to the house. One of the first things I loved about this place when Calder showed it to me before we moved in. I had pressed my palm flat against the stone and read the history of it without thinking. Every winter fire, every quiet morning, the echo of a family that used to live here and filled the rooms with ordinary warmth. I had thought we would do the same. I crouch in front of the fireplace now and start building a fire with the logs stacked in the iron basket beside it. My hands know the motion. I have done this alone more times than I want to count. Calder crouches beside me. I do not look at him. He picks up the fire starter without being asked and holds it out. I take it without touching his hand. Barely. But barely is still close. And close is still something. So, and his scent wraps around me in the small, warm space between the stone and the cold air, and I feel my psychometry hum all the way to my fingertips like a live wire. I am going to say something, Calder says quietly, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. I light the fire, watch the flame catch and grow. You have 30 seconds, I tell him. The meter is running. Calder is quiet for exactly 3 of those seconds. The fire catches properly now, orange and gold climbing the dry wood, throwing warmth across the stone and the side of his face. He looks different in firelight. Softer, more like the man I married and less like the man I have been divorcing in my head for the past 1.5 years. I focus on the flame. 3 years ago, he starts, I found out something about our bond. I do not move. Something the pack doctors told me in confidence. About your psychometry and the way it interacts with a triple alpha bond at full strength. He pauses. They told me that if all 3 of us maintained full emotional proximity to you simultaneously, the feedback loop from 3 alpha bonds running at once could overload your ability. Permanently. The fire crackles. I turn and look at him. His jaw is set. His eyes are on the flame, not on me. The way people look away from the thing they cannot take back once they say it. They said the risk was highest in the first 5 years, he continues, while the bond was still stabilizing. That 3 alphas in full emotional engagement with 1 omega, combined with active psychometry, could essentially burn out your nervous system. That you could lose the ability entirely, see or worse. The room behind us is very quiet. I become aware that Reed and Sawyer have both moved to the edge of the living room. They are standing in the archway. Still, listening. They already know this. All three of them know this. I sit back slowly from the fireplace until I'm no longer crouching, but sitting fully on the hearthrug with my knees drawn up. And I look at Calder, and then at Reed, and then at Sawyer, and I take one careful breath. You decided, I say. My voice comes out remarkably even. I am proud of it. The three of you sat down and decided, without telling me, to emotionally withdraw from our bond to protect my ability. Calder finally looks at me. We decided to protect you. From yourselves. From the risk. Without asking me, I say. Without telling me. Without giving me the information I needed to make my own choice about my own body and my own ability and my own marriage. I pause. For 3 years. Nobody says anything. The fire is warm on my face. My psychometry is running hot and electric under my skin. That full-body hum it does when I am this close to something emotionally saturated. The hearthrug beneath my fingers is old wool, the kind that holds decades, and I can feel the faint impressions in it already. Winters and arguments and children and dogs and ordinary Thursday evenings. All the life that has happened in front of this fireplace before we arrived. I press my palms flat against it and let it ground me because the alternative is letting my power spike and taking out every window in the house. The pack doctors, I say carefully, I told you this 3 years ago. Yes, Calder says. And your solution was to become strangers in my own home. Our solution, Reed says from the archway, and his voice is rough in a way I have never heard from him, scraped clean of all its usual control, was the only one they gave us. Pull back, reduce bond stimulation, keep emotional distance until the 5-year stabilization window closed. Which is when? I ask. Silence. Reed. My voice sharpens. The window. When does it close? He meets my eyes across the room. 4 weeks from now. I stare at him. 4 weeks. I filed for divorce with 4 weeks left on a 5-year countdown that nobody told me existed. The laugh that comes out of me is not funny. It is the kind of laugh that lives right next to crying and occasionally borrows its clothes. I press the back of my hand to my mouth and breathe through it until it passes. Sawyer crosses the room. He does not touch me. He sits down on the floor about 2 feet away, close enough to be present, far enough to ask permission first with the distance. And that small, careful thing absolutely destroys me in a way I refuse to show on my face. We handled it wrong, he says. I know that. We should have told you. We kept thinking we would explain when it was over and you would understand why and it would hurt less. He looks at his hands. It hurt more. We watched it hurt more every month and we could not figure out how to fix it without making it worse. You could have told me the truth. I say quietly. That would have been a strong opening move. We were scared, Sawyer says. I look at him. Sawyer does not say that word easily. None of them do. Scared of what exactly? I ask. That you would choose to stay connected to us anyway, Calder says. That you would decide the risk was worth it. That you would burn yourself out for us. His voice drops. And we were not worth that, Eli. Not then. Maybe not now. But we were not willing to let you make that trade. The fire pops and shifts between us. My chest feels like something enormous is pressing against the inside of it, looking for a way out. Marcus texted me this morning and I felt chosen. But these 3 men spent 3 years hurting me on purpose, so I would not hurt myself for them. I do not know what to do with that. I do not know where to put it. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Once, twice. I already know who it is. I do not reach for it. Not because I am being dramatic. More because I am sitting on a hearthrug in front of a fire with 3 men who just rearranged everything I thought I understood about the last 3 years. And pulling out my phone to read Marcus Webb's texts in this specific moment feels like walking into a burning building while already on fire. I have some self-preservation instincts. Not many, but some. The rain outside has gotten serious. It hits the glass walls in steady sheets now. The kind of rain that makes the whole world feel smaller and closer, like the house itself has pulled its edges in. The firelight moves across the ceiling in warm, shifting patterns, and the four of us sit in the particular silence of people who have just said true things and have not yet figured out what the true things mean for tomorrow. Sawyer is still on the floor, 2 feet away from me. No, Calder has not moved from his spot near the fireplace. Reed finally crosses the room and sits in the armchair closest to the fire, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped, watching me with those dark eyes that have always seen more than he admits to. "Say something," Reed says. "I am thinking," I tell him. "What are you thinking about?" Whether I'm angry or sad or impressed or all three simultaneously? I tilt my head. It is a complicated emotional pie chart right now, Reed. Give me a minute. The corner of his mouth moves. Not quite a smile. The ghost of one. The faint outline of what a smile would look like if Reed Voss allowed himself that particular vulnerability. I have not seen even the ghost of it in years. My chest does something inconvenient. "The pack doctors," I say, on keeping my voice level. "Are they the ones who get to decide what risks I take with my own ability?" "No," Calder says immediately. "Then why did you let them?" "Because we were 28 and 27 and terrified," Sawyer says, and there is something raw in his voice that he is not bothering to cover. "And they told us the worst-case scenario in very specific medical language, and we panicked. All three of us. Same night. We sat in Calder's office until 2 in the morning trying to figure out a solution, and the only one that made sense was the one that would hurt us most." "Hurt you most," I repeat. "Yes." He meets my eyes. "Do you think it was easy? Watching you make coffee every morning and not being able to just sit with you the way we used to? Watching you buy yourself flowers because nobody else did, and knowing exactly why we could not?" His voice cracks slightly at the edge. Just slightly. "That was not indifference, Eli. That was the hardest thing I have ever done." I press my lips together. Here's the problem with being an Omega who can feel the emotional history of everything he touches. You get very good at recognizing authentic pain. You cannot fake it into an object. It soaks in real or it does not soak in at all. And Sawyer right now is sitting 2 feet away from me, radiating something so genuine it is making my palms itch. I pick up the edge of the hearthrug without thinking. It hits me immediately. Not the old history this time, the recent one. Sawyer sitting here alone 6 months ago in the dark. On the specific texture of a man who has talked himself out of crossing a room 100 times. The shape of longing pressed into wool fibers like a fingerprint. I drop the rug. Sawyer watches my face. He knows what I just did. "You sat here," I say quietly. "In the dark." His throat moves. A few times. "Why did you not just come to me?" "Because touching you meant the bond would flare," he says. "And the bond flaring meant your ability would spike. And your ability spiking meant—" "I know what it meant," I say softly. "I just needed to hear that you wanted to." The fire settles between us, a soft collapse of wood shifting deeper into heat, and for a moment the whole room breathes. Calder reaches out slowly. He sets his hand palm up on the hearthrug between us. Not grabbing, not demanding. Just open. An offering with no conditions attached. I look at it for a long time. My power hums warmly, curious, the way it gets when something true is nearby. I turn my hand over and set it against his. The contact is careful. Fingers barely overlapping. But the read comes anyway, immediate and quiet, and what I feel from him is not what I expected. Not guilt first, not strategy or calculation or alpha pride. First thing I feel from Calder Voss is grief. 3 years of it, layered and patient and entirely unperformed. My eyes sting. I do not cry. I decide firmly against it. "This does not fix everything," I say. My voice is steady, barely. "I know," Calder says. "I still filed the papers." "I know that too. And Marcus is texting me." "I am aware," he says. And something tightens in his jaw that is not quite jealousy and not quite fear, and is probably both wearing a very thin coat. Okay, I say. I do not move my hand. Neither does he. Reed watches us from the armchair with an expression I have never seen on his face before in 6 years of knowing him. Unguarded? Open. Almost afraid. From Reed Voss, afraid is the most honest thing I have ever seen. My phone buzzes a third time. I reach for it with my free hand, the one not currently resting against Calder's palm, and I turn the screen up. 3 messages from Marcus. The first 2 I already knew about. The third one is new. I am actually outside Boulder right now. Stopped at a coffee place on Canyon. If you want to meet, I can wait. No pressure. Just say the word. I read it twice. The fire crackles. Rain drives hard against the glass. Calder's hand is warm under mine, and his grief is still humming quietly against my psychometry like a frequency I cannot unhear. I should put the phone down. I do not put the phone down. Who is it? Sawyer asks. Not accusatory, just quiet. He has been watching my face the way people watch weather. Marcus. I set the phone screen down on the rug. He's at a coffee shop on Canyon. The room temperature does not change. The fire keeps burning. But something shifts in the air between the 4 of us. A pressure drop, the specific atmospheric change that happens right before something breaks. Reed stands up from the armchair. Not aggressively. He just unfolds from the chair and straightens to his full height and looks at me with that unguarded expression he has been wearing for the past hour. And I watch something move behind his eyes, something that looks very much like a man who has been holding a door shut for 3 years and is exhausted from the effort. You are thinking about going, he says. It is not a question. I am thinking about a lot of things, I say honestly. Eli. His voice is low. Not commanding. Something more uncomfortable than that. Genuine. I need to tell you something before you decide anything. Reed, Calder says, a warning in it. No. Reed does not look at him. He keeps his eyes on me. We agreed we would tell him everything if it came to this. It has come to this. My hand goes still against Calder's palm. Everything, I repeat. There is a more than what you already told me. Reed crouches down in front of me so we are at eye level. Reed Voss does not crouch. Reed Voss stands at the head of tables and speaks from heights and controls rooms with posture alone. Seeing him deliberately make himself small in front of me does something to my composure that I resent deeply. The pack doctors did not come to us, he says. We went to them. I stare at him. When you first presented your psychometry fully, 6 months into the bond, you read Calder's watch without meaning to. Do you remember? I remember. Calder's father's watch. I had picked it up from the nightstand, and the entire history of it detonated through me in about 4 seconds. 3 generations of Voss men. The last image was Calder's father pressing it into his hand the night he died. I had cried for an hour and could not explain why. I remember, I say carefully. After that, you had a nosebleed that lasted 40 minutes. Reed holds my gaze. We did not tell you how long it lasted because you were sleeping by the time it stopped. The pack doctor came that night. He ran tests while you slept. He pauses. The results were not what we told you today. The fire is very loud suddenly. Or maybe everything else has gone very quiet. What were the results? I say. Not a question. A very calm sentence that is doing a lot of structural work holding me together. The risk was not theoretical, Reed says. It was already happening. A triple alpha bond combined with active psychometry at full engagement was already creating microfractures in your ability's neural pathways. If we had continued at the same emotional intensity, the doctor estimated a 60% chance of permanent ability loss within 2 years. He does not look away. Possibly more than the ability. The last 3 words land like stones dropping into still water. Possibly more than the ability. My vision sharpens. My psychometry surges so fast and hot that the lamp on the side table switches on by itself, flickers twice, and dies. Nobody mentions it. You are telling me, I say, and my voice is so even it frightens even me. That the withdrawal was not a precaution. It was already an emergency. Yes, Reed says. And you let me believe for 3 years that I was simply not enough to hold your attention. His jaw tightens. We thought if you knew the real reason you would push through it anyway. Because I would have, I say immediately. I absolutely would have. We know, Calder says behind me, voice rough. That is why we did not tell you. Something cracks open in my chest. Not dramatically, just a quiet splitting, the way ice fractures in spring, slow and inevitable and silent until the whole surface gives. I pull my hand back from Calder's. I stand up. I am not shaking. I am also not entirely sure I am breathing correctly, but I look steady, and right now that is the best I can offer. You made a medical decision about my body, I say, based on what you thought I would choose. And instead of trusting me with the truth, you let me spend 3 years believing I was invisible in my own home. My power moves through me in a long, slow wave. Every light in the room flickers. I understand why you did it. I can hold both things. The love in it and the absolute catastrophic wrongness of it. I pick up my phone. I am going to meet Marcus for coffee. Eli, Sawyer says, and his voice breaks cleanly on my name. I will be back, I say quietly. I live here, but I need 1 hour with someone who chose me with full information. Just 1 hour. I think I have earned that much. Nobody stops me. The rain is cold when I open the door. It hits me immediately, sharp and real, the kind of cold that clears your head whether you want it cleared or not. I pull my jacket tighter and walk to my car in the driveway, and I do not look back at the house even though every single instinct I have is screaming at me to turn around. I am very used to not turning around. I have been practicing it for 3 years. The drive down Canyon Boulevard takes 11 minutes in the rain. While I know this road well. I have driven it alone on more Tuesday mornings than I can count, going to the small architecture firm downtown where I work, where people ask me questions and value my answers and say my name like it belongs to a person who exists. I park outside the coffee shop and sit in the car for 30 seconds. My psychometry is still running warm under my skin, that full body hum of recent emotional saturation. If I pressed my palm to this steering wheel right now, I would read every drive I have taken in this car. Every morning I left that house carrying something heavy and invisible, and I do not need that confirmed in sensory detail today. I get out of the car. And Marcus Webb is sitting at a window table with 2 cups already in front of him, and the particular expression of someone who has been rehearsing this moment for longer than today. He looks good. That is an objective observation. Warm brown eyes, easy smile, the kind of steady, unhurried energy that used to make 20-year-old me feel safe in a very uncomplicated way. He stands when he sees me come through the door, and there is something so simply courteous about it that my chest aches. Eli, he says. Marcus, I say back. We look at each other for a moment across the small coffee shop, rain streaking the window behind him, some quiet acoustic thing playing through the speakers. And I think about how strange it is that the people from your past stay frozen at the age you left them until suddenly they are standing in front of you fully thawed and 6 years older and real. You look exactly the same, he says. You got taller, I tell him. I did not get taller. You just remembered me wrong. I remember everything perfectly. It is literally my ability. He laughs. It is an easy laugh, unguarded, and it lands in the quiet space between my ribs and the large, complicated feeling currently occupying most of my chest. I sit down across from him and wrap my hands around the coffee cup he pushed toward me and feel nothing from it except warmth because it is new and clean and has no history yet. That is nice. Something with no history. I heard you were still in Boulder, he says, settling back into his chair. And I heard about the triplets. I raise an eyebrow. What exactly did you hear? That Eli Calloway bonded with the Voss brothers 3 weeks after we ended things. His voice is easy, not bitter, just factual. I was in Portland trying to write my thesis, and you were apparently collecting alpha kings. Collecting is a strong word. It was more like they collectively happened to me. How does that happen exactly? Calder asked me what I was reading off a wine glass at a university event, and I made the rookie mistake of answering him honestly. I take a sip of the coffee. It is good. Warm and slightly sweet, the way I like it. And I do not ask how he remembered that, because some things are better left as small kindnesses without examination. 1 month later, I had met all 3 of them. 2 months after that, we were bonded. It moved fast. And now, he asks, carefully, now I have divorce papers on my kitchen counter and 3 husbands sitting in my living room in a power outage knowing I am here. Marcus is quiet for a moment. Are you okay? The question is so straightforward and so simply human that I have to take a breath before answering it. I think I will be, I say. I think I've been okay for a while without realizing it. I survived 3 years of something very hard. I filed paperwork. I made perfect coffee every morning and bought my own flowers, and I am still here, which means something. It means a lot, Marcus says quietly. We sit with that for a moment. Rain on the window, music in the background. 2 people who used to know each other very well and are now carefully figuring out who each other became. I did not come back for you, Marcus says then, and his honesty is so clean it almost surprises me. I want to say that clearly. I came back for a job at CU, and I texted because I wanted to know you were doing well, not to complicate things. That is very mature of you, I say. I have been in therapy for 4 years. It shows. I smile. Actually smile. The real unguarded kind that I have not produced before noon in longer than I want to admit. Marcus leans forward slightly. Can I ask you something? You can try. Do you still love them? The question sits between us on the table like a 3rd cup of coffee neither of us ordered. I look at it for a long moment. My psychometry is quiet now, settled, the way it gets when my emotions stop fighting each other and arrive at something honest. I never stopped, I say. That was always the problem. Marcus nods slowly. No judgment in it. Then why the papers? Because love was not enough to make me visible, I say. And I needed to be visible. I needed it badly enough to break my own heart to get their attention. I pause. Which worked, by the way. Horrifyingly well. He looks at me for a long moment. What are you going to do? My phone lights up on the table between us. A text from Reed. 3 words. Come home, Eli. Below it, 30 seconds later, one from Sawyer. Please. And then Calder, whose texts are always the longest and arrive last because he edits them too carefully. The stabilization window closes in 4 weeks. The doctors cleared full bond contact starting today. We have been waiting to tell you at the right moment and handled everything wrong, and I know that. But if you come home tonight, I will spend every one of those 4 weeks and every day after them making sure you never have to buy your own flowers again. You do not have to forgive us tonight. You just have to come back through the door. I read it twice. Marcus reads my face instead of the screen. Go, he says simply. I look up at him. I mean it, he says. Go, Eli. You already know what you want. You have known since before you sat down. I pick up my phone. Set down the coffee cup. Stand up and pull my jacket back on and look at Marcus Webb, my first love, sitting warm and settled and genuinely unbothered at a window table in the rain. You are very well adjusted, I tell him. 4 years of therapy, he says again. Truly life-changing. I laugh, and it comes out whole, and I walk to the door. I stop with my hand on the handle. Marcus, yeah? Thank you for the coffee and for texting me this morning. I pause. I think I needed the reminder. Of what? That I am worth choosing. I push the door open. Turns out I already was. They were just very bad at showing it. The rain is still falling when I step outside. I sit in my car for exactly 45 seconds before I start the engine. Not because I'm hesitating. More because I want to arrive at this decision fully. The way you step into cold water deliberately instead of falling in. I want to choose this with my whole chest, not just the part that is tired of hurting. I think about Calder's grief soaked into his palm, Sawyer sitting alone on the hearthrug in the dark, Reed crouching down to my eye level because he did not want to speak down to me for once. I think about 3 years of distance that was not indifference. 3 years of men who loved me so badly they broke both of us trying to protect one of us. It is the most catastrophically misguided romantic gesture in human history. It is also the most Calder, Reed, and Sawyer thing I have ever heard in my life. I start the engine and pull out into the rain. The drive back takes 11 minutes. Same road. Same rain. Completely different gravity pulling me forward instead of away. I park in the driveway and sit for one more breath looking at the house. All glass and warm light from the fireplace flickering amber through the windows. And I think about the first time I pressed my hand to the hearthstone and read decades of ordinary warmth from the family before us. I thought we would do the same. Turns out we still might. I'm just on a longer timeline than expected. I get out of the car and walk to the front door and open it. The house is quiet, warm. The fire is still going, built up higher than when I left, which means someone has been tending it while I was gone. My wet jacket drips on the entryway floor and I hang it on the hook by the door. The hook I installed myself in month 2 because there was nowhere to put coats and nobody else was going to solve that problem. I walk into the living room. All 3 of them are there. Calder is standing by the fireplace with one hand on the mantel, still and watchful, his eyes finding me the moment I clear the archway. Sawyer is on the couch with his elbows on his knees, and he straightens so fast when he sees me that he nearly knocks the throw pillow to the floor. Reed is by the window, phone in his hand, and he sets it face down on the windowsill the moment I walk in with a finality that feels like a small ceremony. Nobody speaks first. I look at the 3 of them in the firelight. These complicated, deeply frustrating, quietly devoted men who have been my husbands for 5 years and strangers for 3 of them. And I feel my psychometry hum all the way from my sternum to my fingertips, warm and steady and entirely unsurprised by what it finds. Love, layered and imperfect and patient, soaked into every surface of this room. I have been living inside their love for 3 years without being able to feel it. That is going to cost them. I want to be clear about that. We have work to do, conversations that will not be easy, trust that will need rebuilding one honest sentence at a time. I am not walking through this door and erasing the last 3 years with a warm feeling and a fire. But I am walking through this door. That has to count for something. The coffee was good, I say. Sawyer exhales so hard it is almost a laugh. Almost. Marcus says hello, I add. He's very well adjusted. I respect it. Eli. Calder's voice is rough. He pushes off the mantel and crosses the room toward me, slow and deliberate, giving me every opportunity to step back. And I do not step back. He stops close enough that his scent wraps around me fully, cedar and pine and winter stone. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself breathe it in without bracing against it. My bond mark warms at the back of my neck, gentle, like something waking up after a long, cold sleep. The stabilization window, I say quietly. It closes in 4 weeks. 26 days, Calder says. The doctors confirmed it this morning. Full bond contact cleared as of today. So all of this, I gesture loosely at the room, the house, the last 3 years, is almost over. The restriction is almost over, he says. We are just beginning. I look at him for a long moment. Then I reach out and press my palm flat against his chest. The read comes immediately, the way it always does, and what moves through me from Calder Voss is staggering in its simplicity. No strategy, no alpha posturing. No carefully constructed emotional architecture. Just one feeling, enormous and unedited, the same one soaked into every surface of this house. He has been loving me out loud in every room I was not standing in. My eyes sting for the 2nd time today. I allow it this time. I am still angry, I tell him. I know, he says. And we are going to have a very long conversation about medical autonomy and informed consent, and the specific kind of protection that becomes control when you remove someone's right to choose. I know that too. And I want flowers, I say. Real ones. Weekly, not tulips. I have been buying myself tulips for months, and I am done with tulips. Something with color. Surprise me. Something breaks open in Calder's expression. Not breaking down. Breaking open. There is a difference, and what comes through is so unguarded and so entirely human that I feel it in my back teeth. He brings his hand up and covers mine where it rests against his chest. Every week, he says, for the rest of your life. Reed reaches me next. He crosses the room without his usual deliberateness, just direct and unguarded, and he cups my face in both hands and presses his forehead against mine and breathes. Just breathes. No words from Reed Voss, the man who runs boardrooms with vocabulary alone. Just his forehead warm against mine, and his breath steady and close. I am sorry, he says, low and stripped and genuine. Not for protecting you, for not trusting you with the truth of why. That, I say quietly, is the correct apology. I feel his mouth curve against my temple, barely. The ghost of a smile going somewhere real. Sawyer does not do anything halfway. He crosses the room and wraps both arms around me from behind, chin dropping to my shoulder, and he holds on with the specific grip of someone who has been not doing this for 3 years and is absolutely done with restraint. I sat on that hearthrug 11 times, he says into my shoulder. I counted. I laugh, whole and warm and surprised out of me. Of course you counted, I tell him. You count things too. We are the same. We are not the same, Sawyer. We are a little bit the same. I let myself lean back into him just slightly, enough to feel the warmth of him solid and real at my back. My psychometry is singing now, bright and full, the way it feels when everything around me is saturated with something true. The bond mark at the back of my neck pulses once, warm and unmistakable, and I feel it answered from all 3 of them simultaneously. A resonance moving through the room like the first note of something long overdue. 26 days until the window closes. 26 days until the bond can run at full strength without risk, and without restriction, without 3 men standing at a careful distance loving me in a language I was never allowed to hear. I look at the divorce papers still sitting on the kitchen counter through the archway. Someone needs to throw those away, I say. Calder is already moving toward the kitchen. He picks them up, folds them once, drops them in the trash without ceremony or drama, and the small sound of paper hitting the bottom of the bin is the most satisfying thing I have heard all year. Reed's hands are still warm against my face. Sawyer still has not let go. Outside, the rain is beginning to ease. Through the glass walls, the flatirons are emerging slowly from the gray, patient and enormous and exactly where they have always been. And the early afternoon light is starting to come through in long pale strips across the living room floor. I used to watch this view alone and cry. I think from now on, I will just watch it. For the record, I say to the room, to all 3 of them, to this house that has been waiting for us to fill it with ordinary warmth the way every house before us did. The next time any of you make a major decision about my body, my ability, or my life without consulting me, I will not file for divorce. No? Sawyer asks against my shoulder. No. I will simply move every piece of furniture in this house 3 inches to the left using my power and let you live with that. Calder comes back through the archway. He looks at me for a moment, and then he does something I've not seen in 3 years. He smiles, full and real and directed entirely at me, like I am the funniest and most necessary person in any room he has ever stood in. Understood, he says. Good. I settle into the warmth surrounding me from all sides, bond mark alive and glowing softly at my neck, power humming contentedly under my skin, fire burning steady in the grate. Now somebody make me fresh coffee. Mine went cold, and I drove in the rain for this reunion. I deserve a hot cup. 3 men move toward the kitchen simultaneously. I sink into the couch, pull a blanket over my legs, and watch them with the particular satisfaction of someone who spent 5 years disappearing and has just decided, firmly and finally, to take up every inch of space he was always owed. Outside, the last of the rain fades. The mountains are beautiful and clear and still. I am still here. I was always worth staying for. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Hit subscribe. The next story drops soon.